In 2019, Clark's lost £84 million. In 2020, the pandemic shut every one of its shops, and by the end of that year, the company fell into insolvency, and the family who built it lost control for the first time in almost 2 centuries. The rescue came from Hong Kong, and the controlling stake ended up with a Chinese sportswear company founded by an Olympic gymnast. After 195 years, Clark's was no longer the Clark's families. Now, if you grew up in Britain, you wore these shoes. First pair you ever owned, sat in a quiet shop while someone measured your feet with a cold metal gauge, and your mum said they have to last. Clark's, school shoes, desert boots. How does a company that survives Victoria, 2 world wars and the Great Depression end up here? There's no single villain, it's something slower and stranger. Because this same company had been on the brink of ruin once before, over 150 years earlier, and been rescued then too. That first rescue made it one of the great British success stories. The second rescue ended the dynasty. 2 rescues, 150 years apart, the same shape, completely different endings. That's the story. Let's go back to where it starts, because the beginning contains everything. 1825, the village of Street in Somerset, a cluster of houses in the shadow of an ancient hill called Glastonbury Tor. A young man named Cyrus Clark sets up a tannery, not making shoes, making sheepskin rugs, practical things, Quaker things. But rugs leave waste, offcuts, the awkward little pieces too small for a rug, piling up in the corner, good for nothing. And this is where the second brother enters. Cyrus's younger brother James came to work alongside him, by some accounts at 16. James looked at those useless offcuts of woolly sheepskin and had the thought that would echo for 200 years. If sheepskin is so good underfoot as a rug, why not put it on the foot itself? James stitched the waist into warm sheepskin slippers. The first one was called the Brown Petersburg, the very first Clark's shoe, made of rubbish. A whole empire built from scraps. And in a strange way, that idea never really leaves the story. A company that began by finding value in what other people threw away. By 1842, Clark's was selling around 1,000 pairs a month. In 1851, the brothers won 2 awards at the Great Exhibition. A rug maker and his teenage brother, from a village most people hadn't heard of, had built something real. But I told you, Clark's would stand on the brink of ruin twice. The first time comes sooner than you'd expect, right here while the founders are still alive. Cyrus and James were brilliant at making shoes. They were not brilliant at running the money. By 1863, the business was in trouble, a recession. And in the words of the company's own historians, the firm had suffered from a certain lack of financial rigor and questionable planning. They'd built something real and nearly run it off a cliff. What saved it tells you everything. The Clarks were Quakers, part of the same tight, trusted network that produced Cadbury, Rowntree, Barclays, Lloyds. When the brothers were drowning, the local Quaker community stepped in with the money. But the loan came with a hard condition. Cyrus and James had to step down. Control would pass to James's son, William Stevens Clark, 24 years old. The founders, pushed aside by their own community because they couldn't manage the money, and the young man who replaced them turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to the company. William brought in the factory system. He invested in the Singer sewing machine. He mechanized shoemaking, by many accounts the first time it had been done in Britain. Turned a failing craft workshop into a modern factory. Paid the debt back in full. And in 1883 launched the hygienic range, the first shoe ever shaped to the natural form of the human foot. That idea became the bedrock of everything Clark's stood for. The thing your mum trusted when she said, "They're good for your feet." That started with William Clark. Remember that sequence. Company on the brink. Outside money arrives. Control changes hands. Old order ends. Company survives and becomes greater than before. That sequence happens again, almost exactly, and ends completely differently. To understand what was eventually lost, you have to understand what Clark's actually was, not just as a company, but as a way of doing things. The Clark family were Quakers, and for the Quakers, business wasn't separate from conscience, it was an expression of it. You made something useful. You treated the people who made it with dignity. You gave something back to the community you depended on. That wasn't charity, it was just the right way to operate. So the family didn't just employ the people of street, they built the town around them. Workers' homes, solid brick houses, many of which are still standing today. A school, a library, a theatre, a swimming pool, open air, for anyone who wanted to use it. A town hall, playing fields. These weren't perks, they were just what you did if you were a Quaker employer with the means to do it. And the family carried those values beyond the factory gates too. In the 1850s, a Clark family member joined the movement that boycotted goods made by enslaved people. In 1913, Alice Clark, the first woman ever to sit on the Clark's board, marched to Hyde Park for women's suffrage, carrying a banner for the women of street. This was a shoe company whose family were abolitionists and suffragists. The values weren't a line in a brochure, they were just who these people were. And that's what makes the ending so difficult to sit with. Because a business built on principle, on community, on duty to one Somerset village, is a business that was never built to be ruthless. It had no instinct for the cold calculation that survival in modern retail eventually demands. The very things that made Clark's beloved were the things that left it exposed. A company with a heart is a company with a soft center, and one day it would face people who only cared about the numbers. Keep that in mind. Because the way this story ends, who ends up owning it, where the shoes end up being made, is the exact opposite of everything this family stood for. But first, the company has to conquer the world, and it does it with two shoes that almost nobody saw coming. Between 1945 and 1970, Clark's grew from around 1% of the UK shoe market to 9% in a single generation. And then came the Desert Boot and the Wallabee, two shoes that escaped Somerset entirely. The Desert Boot was designed by a family member named Nathan Clark, inspired by a rough suede boot he'd seen officers wearing in Cairo during the war. Unveiled at the Chicago Shoe Fair in 1949, America fell for it immediately. A car salesman named Bronson Davis pushed it to the Ivy League crowd through ads in Esquire and The New Yorker, got it into Abercrombie, Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue. The Wallabee went even further. It became a cult object in Jamaican culture, then found its way into hip-hop. David Bowie wore Wallabees on Soul Train in 1975. A shoe made in the shadow of Glastonbury Tour had become a global statement of cool. A quiet Somerset firm had accidentally made shoes the whole world wanted. If the story ended here, one of the great British success stories, it doesn't end here. Here is the painful truth underneath the back half of this story. Clark's was a British manufacturer, and Britain was becoming a country that no longer made things cheaply enough to compete. Factory closures began in 1978 and rolled through the 1980s. The same arithmetic that hollowed out so much of British industry, shoes could be made far more cheaply abroad. Each factory that closed was another piece of the original Clark's. The town, the promise, the Quaker commitment, quietly switching off. And as the manufacturing struggled, outsiders circled. In the late 1980s, a company called Beresford International tried to take Clark's public. The family fought it off. They kept their grip. Remember this moment, the first time outsiders reached for a wounded Clark's, beaten back. 30 years later, a different outsider would try again. That time, the family wouldn't win. Then came 2005, the decision that marked the end of the old Clarks. The company began moving production to the Far East. For 180 years, a Clark's shoe was made by the people of Street in Street. The whole soul of the company was wrapped up in that act. The town, the homes, the workers, the Quaker promise. Now the making was leaving. The shoes would still say Clark's, but built thousands of miles away by people the family had never met, in countries the founders never saw. The economics left no choice. But in choosing to survive, Clark's quietly cut the thread that connected the brand to the place that gave it meaning. The company that was famous for making things had stopped making them. Full beat. Hold that line before continuing. And in 2019, Clark's closed its very last factory on British soil, after almost 200 years. And in that same year, the numbers broke. For years, Clark's had been quietly struggling. The high street was collapsing under online shopping. The brand had drifted, while Dr. Martens and Birkenstock had turned their heritage into something people actually wanted to wear. Clark's had the history, but history doesn't pay the rent. The trap had been closing in 4 steps. Brand drifts, high street shrinks, last factory closes, losses arrive. In 2019, the same year it shut its last British factory, Clark's reported a loss of £84 million. Some reports put the total above £100 million. Then 2020. Pandemic. Lockdown. For a chain of physical shoe shops, very nearly the end. Stores shut across 75 countries. 900 corporate job cuts announced worldwide. More than 100 of them in Somerset. Each of those 4 steps had seemed survivable on its own. Together, they were fatal. And for the second time in its history, Clark's stood on the very brink. Just like 1863, a rescuer appeared with the money. But this rescuer was not the local Quaker community. November 2020. Clark's announces its lifeline. £100 million from a Hong Kong private equity firm called Lion Rock Capital. The money came with a condition, and if you've been paying attention, it will sound familiar. Just as in 1863, the rescue required the family to give up control. Before the deal, the Clark's family owned around 80 to 85% of the business. For the first time in almost 2 centuries, an outsider held the majority. The deal went through a company voluntary arrangement, a CVA. In plain terms, a controlled admission the company couldn't pay its debts. 60 stores moved to 0 rent, the rest to turnover-based rent. In December 2020, around 90% of creditors approved it. The deal was done. After roughly 195 years, the Clark family no longer controlled Clark's. Think back to Beresford in the 1980s. The family fought that off. They'd passed the company down through generation after generation, intact, from 1825 to 2020. And then, in one pandemic year, the line broke. Not to a raider, to a rescuer. Which is somehow worse, because there was no villain to fight, only the slow arithmetic that had been closing in for 40 years. 1863. Outside money, control changes, old order ends, company survives and becomes great. 2020. Outside money, control changes, old order ends, company survives. But this time, there is no William Clark waiting. Who exactly had just taken control of Clark's? Because the name behind the rescue is one of the most remarkable twists in the whole story. Lion Rock Capital's non-executive chairman was a man named Li Ning. Li Ning is one of the most famous athletes China has ever produced. A gymnast, 6 Olympic medals, 3 of them gold, at the 1984 Los Angeles Games. And at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, it was Li Ning who lit the flame, carried high into the air on wires circling the Bird's Nest Stadium in front of the entire world. After sport, he built a Chinese sportswear company under his own name. Here is how the ownership chain works, and this matters. Lion Rock rescued Clark's in November 2020. In January 2021, Li Ning's company, Viva China Holdings, bought 51% of the vehicle that owns Clark's for around £51 million. That gave Viva China majority control. By February 2023, Lion Rock sold its remaining stake to Viva China. So, Viva China holds the majority. The Clark family holds around 49%. Li Ning's company is in control. And let's be clear about what this actually was. Clark's was not stolen. It was a genuinely struggling company rescued from collapse by an investor willing to put in £100 million when almost no one else would. The family kept a significant stake. The shoes still carry the name. The headquarters is still in Street, Somerset. But the control, the majority, the final say, now sits with a sportswear empire built by a Chinese Olympian. A company that once built swimming pools for the people of one English village is now run for the growth opportunity of a market on the other side of the world. Clark's is still alive, which makes it different from a true gone story and more honest for it. The brand turned 200 in 2025. The headquarters is still in Street. The Desert Boot and the Wallabee are still made and still iconic. The Alfred Gillett Trust guards 2 centuries of the family archive. A shoemaker's museum stands in the village where it all began. But the company keeps stumbling. In January 2024, its Netherlands operations went bankrupt in a restructuring. The high street it depended on keeps shrinking, and it now competes as a globally owned brand against the very rivals, Dr. Martens, Birkenstock, that turned their heritage into cool while Clark's was fighting for survival. For almost 200 years, Clark's was a verb in British life. Not just a brand, a ritual. The shoes that had to last. The shop where someone measured your feet properly. The company you could point to on a map. That village, that family, those values. A business that believed the act of making something well and treating the people who made it with dignity was the whole point. That model, local making, family stewardship, a company that belonged to a place, doesn't really exist in the way it used to. Clark's wasn't just a shoemaker. It was proof that a business could still work that way. And now it's gone into other hands, and that proof has quietly expired. The shoes are still there. The name is still there. What's harder to find is the thing underneath, the sense that it all still meant what it once did.
So what is the real story of Clark's? It's a story about being saved twice, and what it costs you each time. In 1863, when the founders ran out of money, the Quaker community stepped in. They took control from Cyrus and James and handed it to a young man who made the company greater than it had ever been. The price of that first rescue was the founders' pride. The reward was nearly 2 centuries of glory. In 2020, when the company hit the brink again, a different kind of rescuer appeared. The price this time was the family's control and the company's 200-year Britishness. The reward, survival for now, went to the shoes. 2 rescues, 150 years apart, almost identical on the surface. The first built the empire, the second ended the dynasty. Clark's is still on your high street. The brothers who shod the world are long gone. And so, now, is the family's hold on what they built from a pile of sheepskin offcuts in a Somerset village. Britain still wears the shoes. It just doesn't own the bootmaker anymore. That's the pattern this channel exists to follow. The great British names that rose from nothing and quietly slipped into other hands. If you want to see more of them, subscribe and we'll see you on the next one.